Good morning. Thank you so much for joining Community Housing Network as we celebrate the grand opening of Marsh Brook Place. We're so excited about Marsh Brook Place. It's our community's first permanent supportive housing dedicated to young people who are 18 to 24 years old who are also experiencing homelessness. We'd like to start out with a video, a short one, about 8 minutes, to give you a tour and introduce you to Marsh Brook Place, and then have you join us afterwards for a forum so we can continue the conversation about transition age youth and their housing needs. We will have a live chat as part of the forum, so we'd love to hear from you, your questions and concerns. But let's start off with the star of the show, Marsh Brook Place. Please enjoy this video, and we'll see you back here shortly. Thank you so much.
My name's Jade. I'm 21 years old. I've been in this program since I was 18. I just moved in my new apartment today, and I'm just so excited. I don't know what I expected it to be like, but I know when I saw it, it was more than what I would thought. They put a lot of effort into it and thought. You can tell that they did, so that's what I like about it. I don't know what else to say, but I like it. But you know.
Welcome to Marsh Brook Place. Sonia and I are so glad you could join us for our video grand opening. Marsh Brook Place is the first collaboration between Community Housing Network and Huckleberry House, with Community Housing Network serving as the developer, property owner, and manager, and Huckleberry House will provide on-site supportive services. Marsh Brook Place is Central Ohio's first permanent supportive housing development dedicated to young people aged 18 to 24 who are experiencing homelessness.
Marsh Brook Place fills a desperate need in our community for stable housing for homeless youth who are fleeing family conflict, trafficking, and neglect. The young people who will call Marsh Brook Place their home have experienced literal homelessness, living on the streets, in shelters, or in a transitional living program.
Community Housing Network and Huckleberry House hope that our collaboration and innovative partnership will contribute to building a system that helps young people as they transition into adulthood. Our innovative program and our public-private partnership will serve as a model for other communities throughout the U.S. Huckleberry House and other community service agencies provide a home for these youth, giving them the support they need for well-being and the skills they need to live on their own. Life at Marsh Brook Place can mean the difference between a life of poverty, abuse, and violence, and one that is productive, meaningful, and fulfilling.
My siblings and I experienced homelessness multiple times. The last time was when I was a teenager. I believe that my history of experiencing homelessness will allow me to be a better property manager and understand where the youth are coming from and empathize with them, and recognizing that they have a lot of barriers and trauma that they didn't ask for, and again, not placing judgment on them for their experience or where they are now. I feel a huge obligation to make the youth feel comfortable and secure, building trusting and engaging relationships.
Marsh Brook Place is filling a growing need in our community. Structural racism makes minority adults more likely to become homeless at a younger age than white youth. Last year, the continuum of care served 881 young people. 70% were Black or African American. Gender can be a risk factor too. Of those 881 youth served by the continuum of care last year, 61% were female and 28% reported being pregnant.
Sonia, those numbers are just alarming. Many experts believe the youth are undercounted in homeless systems because they're less likely to use the traditional programs in shelters.
That's right. In 2017, Huckleberry House and other community partners did research, and what we found was that about 3,000 young people were experiencing homelessness just in Central Ohio.
That's why we're so excited we could do Marsh Brook, and we know that the living environment that young people are in has a huge impact on their recovery. And so in designing it, we reached out to a group of young people and they helped us choose the site, and we used a lot of their input and ideas to do the programs and the amenities that we're providing here.
Well, here we are in the calming room, which was really designed for the residents of Marsh Brook Place as a space where they could just escape, get away, calm down, kind of recharge. And so we filled the room with items that would reach every sense. So we have a weighted blanket, we have the sound of the water, we have a diffuser here. There's also some sweet treats and just a room full of different textures. It's also one of the few spaces here at Marsh Brook Place where the lights can be dimmed. So we've really created this space so that the young people can create the environment they need to just kind of recharge and calm themselves. The laundry room, community room, living room, and patio are all designed to help residents recover, relax, and develop life skills. Marsh Brook was designed to be a home not only to individuals, but to young families too. We offer access to childcare and plan to add a playground with a generous donation from Rockford Construction. The community outside of Marsh Brook is critical to our residents' success as well. We had tremendous support from volunteers at our housewarming, who donated essential move-in items like bedding, kitchenware, and cleaning supplies. We are working with community organizations to offer education and employment programs. CODA bus stops nearby make it easy for residents to get to work, childcare, and school.
Thank you to the funders and public officials for supporting one of our community's most vulnerable populations, youth experiencing homelessness aged 18 to 24. The funders include the Affordable Housing Trust of Columbus and Franklin County, the City of Columbus, Franklin County, Federal Home Loan Bank of Cincinnati, Huntington National Bank, the Ohio Housing Finance Agency, Ohio Capital Corporation for Housing, and the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And of course, we'd like to thank the Community Shelter Board and the Continuum of Care for their leadership in bringing grant funds to our community specifically designated for youth experiencing homelessness and making projects like Marsh Brook Place possible.
I want to congratulate you for the amazing accomplishment in bringing Marsh Brook Place from concept to fruition. Back in January, I was here with Secretary Carson and Governor Mike DeWine when this was still under construction. I returned last month for a brief tour and to witness firsthand the amazing drive-through donation campaign that was a culmination of the entire community coming together in our joint effort to combat youth homelessness. On behalf of HUD and Secretary Ben Carson, I am incredibly proud of your innovativeness and your work to date and that which is yet to come. Let's keep the momentum going. May God bless you, your work, the people who you will serve each and every day, and may God continue to bless this great city and our great nation. Thank you.
This program helped me come real far. I don't know, I just feel like I was really blessed, and lucky to get in this program, and I met a lot of, great people, a lot of people that I feel like I will carry with me throughout life. Before I started this stuff, I was like 18. I was 18 and I didn't know what to do, where to go, nothing, and I was just lucky I was at school when they came to me, They helped me grow a lot and I built a bond with them, and I came very far in this program.
As our video grand opening comes to an end, Community Housing Network and Huckleberry House thank you for helping change the lives of so many young people. We look forward to seeing you in person soon. Welcome back. We hope you enjoyed the video, and we're so glad you're joining us now for this forum to continue the conversation and talk a little bit more about transition age youth and those who are experiencing homelessness and their housing needs. So we're very glad to have you join us. We hope that with the Marsh Brook opening and having this conversation that we just continue the momentum and the focus that our communities had on this population and building a comprehensive system to help support them. And so thank you so much for joining us to talk more about that. We have with us today some panelists who are leaders in affordable housing and youth services. So we're so grateful they could join us. And just remember, you do have an opportunity to do live chat so we can hear your questions and concerns. But first, let me introduce the panel today and thank them all for joining us. So we have with us Priscilla Tyson, a City of Columbus Council member. We also have from Huckleberry House, Amanda LeClaire and Jerome DiCarlo. Amanda is the housing director for Huck House, and Jerome is the permanent supportive housing coordinator and our partner at Marsh Brook, and one of our favorite agencies. And then Carly Boos is here as well. She's the executive director of the Affordable Housing Alliance of Central Ohio. So welcome to all of you, and thank you for being here. And I'll just start out by saying we're obviously all very excited and very honored to be part of Marsh Brook Place and offering 40 new units to young people who experienced homelessness, and that's a very positive thing. But we also know that in Franklin County alone, there's probably around 3,000 young people who are experiencing homelessness. So I'm just curious about your initial thoughts of what is required to change that, to get that number to zero. And I know, Carly, maybe you want to start and give us some of your thoughts. That'd be great.
Sure, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. I think with any problem, the first step is defining it, right? So saying that we have 3,000, that's a target that we can work backwards from. But it's also important to kind of contextualize what's happening right outside that number. And we've got 4,000 additional youth who are at imminent risk of homelessness at any given time. And we've got 55,000 youth who are at or below the poverty line. Taken together, that's certainly a large set of our population, but it's not an obstacle that can't be overcome. It's not so overwhelming that there aren't really reliable strategies that we can tap into to triage and deal with it. I also think helping define who is inside those numbers helps inform the strategy too. And we know from looking at the populations we've worked with before that there are disproportionate numbers of youth who are coming from situations of violence, who are coming from abusive homes, who are coming from trafficking, who are coming from homes that don't value and respect who their identity is. And being able to approach that from an intersectional standpoint also really helps tell us where we're going to move forward. But I think kind of given all of that, the first thing that we do as a community is we say, enough's enough. We're done. We're not tolerating youth homelessness in Central Ohio, in Columbus. It is not who we are, and we're not going to let it happen. And I think that we've seen that be successful. Just making that commitment has worked before. It worked for chronic homelessness. It worked for veterans homelessness. And Columbus has the infrastructure to do that for youth homeless here. Marsh Brook is an amazing godsend for so many of these kids, but that's not the only thing that's working in our favor. We've also got the rest of the services that Huckleberry House provides and Community Housing Network provides. And we've got Carol Stewart Village, and we've got Scholar House 3 coming, and we've got Kaleidoscope Youth Center. We've got the people and the commitment to doing this. I think it's just about standing up and saying, we need everybody else to get in line with us and making sure that tent is as big as it possibly can be. I know that some of the partners we're going to need to start to loop in here. Some of them are the usual players. Some of it is, child welfare and social services and kind of having a unified approach to all of these different touch points with the people that we're talking about. But it's also about looking at, the LGBTQIA institutions and who is trusted in that space and how are they looped in with us. And it's about talking about youth policing and harm reduction. And just making sure that as an entire community and system, we are all moving towards this goal together. And I think we're on the right steps.
Yeah, Councilmember Tyson, when you hear that, does that ring true for you, or would you add anything?
First, yes, it does. And so, again, first of all, I want to congratulate the CHN and Huckleberry House for working together to ensure that we have a place like Marsh Brook for our young people. And again, I want to also thank all the funders. Certainly, it was a public-private partnership to got us to this place to be able to provide this housing and support systems for our young people. I want to thank Sonia for sharing her story with us. But to add, first of all, I want to say ditto to everything that Carly has already stated. I truly believe that you ask, like, how do we change and close this gap? So there's a couple things. One, I'm someone who always asks the question, how did we get here? How did we get here? And so think about how we got here. It's making sure that we understand the lives of our young people from 18 to 24, what happened in their lives to get them for them to be at a place like this. And I would venture to say that as a community, we haven't been able to provide the supportive services to their families, to have an understanding of their issues and concerns. And I think about when you were sharing this information, I just completed the Commission on Black Girls study, and it was completed in July. And when I think about the numbers of individuals who is in the homeless system, it tends to be like of the 881 that we had talked about in the film, that 70% of those are Black individuals, and 61% of those are female. And so again, when I think about those numbers, and I think about the report of the Commission on Black Girls, I will tell you that of our reports from 11 to 22, of the girls under 16, 32.8% said that they, of the 441 we surveyed, have been in the home, have been homeless. And then of the over 16, 46% had been. So what this says to me, and a girl or an African American individual's life is based upon the economic context of their families. And so if we are not supporting families, and most individuals are in single family households with parents that have maybe a high school education or less. So you're already starting, our young people are not starting off in the best environment to help them move forward. So we need supportive services when they are younger. And then because when you miss that, you're really setting people up to be in the homeless system. And then I think that it is critically important that the 3,000 individuals that are in our community, that we need to make sure that we are providing, again, public-private partnerships. We have an understanding of what's really going on. So I agree with Carly. Says you have to declare this an issue. And we have to be constantly talking about it to raise its awareness so our community, including electeds like myself, feel like we have something to do, we have work to do to make sure that our young people are not continuing to be in the homeless system. But until we have everyone totally on board, we have to support these nonprofits that are doing this work to provide these wraparound services to ensure that our young people have can enhance their overall quality of life.
Yeah, I appreciate that insight. And you mentioned we have to know know more about our young people to really help solve this issue. And when you think about a person who's in a shelter, the homeless shelter, the average age is 50 or over. And so obviously someone 18 to 24 will have different needs. I don't know, maybe if Amanda, you can talk to us a little bit about, so somebody who is experiencing homelessness who's 18 to 24, how are their needs different than somebody else who may be older than that in the homeless system?
Yeah, so I think for this age group, these are young people who haven't been on their feet yet. So there's a couple different things at play. Making sure that they have the knowledge and the tools they need to stay stably housed, which, you look at budgeting, understanding leasing, and all of the rules and, their rights within that. So just the basic skills of being able to function independently and kind of manage your household. And then when you look at brain development that, their ability for decision making and problem solving and impulse control, that's the last part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, to be developed. And so you're putting, there's that piece that you have to factor into making sure that we're supporting them appropriately and helping them problem solve kind of all along the way. Because there are things that, all of the trauma that they've experienced and how that impacts, their decision making and just ability to be independent, and really making sure that as a system and service providers that we're understanding all those pieces and how they work together in supporting them, so that it's not just, give them this tool or this skill. Well, we can focus on that, but if we don't understand that part of the brain that says, "Ooh, that's not a good idea," that's not kind of in place yet, that puts them at jeopardy for potentially losing houses. So it's a process with this age group of, for a lot of young people who are not unstably housed, making mistakes in those areas. You have someone that's your safety net, whether it's they could bail you out on this electric bill because maybe you bought the shoes instead of that, or it doesn't mean homelessness when you have an error. But for these young people, that's not the case. So they truly need a lot of support, education, and kind of that process.
That makes sense. And Jerome, in your experience at Marsh Brook and with young people, do you see the same thing? Does that resonate with you?
I can. To piggyback off of what Amanda said, underdeveloped, and that's part of our the daily living skills, how to talk to people, conflict resolution, things that we were taught coming up. Many of them did not have the opportunities to learn because they were forced with making adult decisions with adolescent information. And as a result of that, it's a pattern. If I respond this way and I get the results from responding this way, I will continue to do that. And so a lot of the work that we're doing really does stem from interpersonal communication skills. What does it take? How do you identify what it is that you need? And how can you articulate that in a way that means the most to you and the person you're speaking to? So communication is huge. And a lot of these young people have not been taught that. The other thing I'll add just briefly is lived experience, right? So there's a lot to be said about being a certain age and having gone through certain things. And to Amanda's point, I think is a salient one. There are a lot of situations that you get in, you can make a mistake, but not make a mess out of the mistake. A lot of these young people have not been taught how to navigate out of certain situations, whether it's an abusive relationship, whether it's trauma. We are here to ensure that we point them in the right direction to help them get from point A to point B. And more importantly, let them know that this is not going to define your future. This is a situation that we're working through so that you can live your best life.
And one thing I would want to add to that, just what Jerome is saying, is that many of these, whether it's communication styles or different things, are what kept these youth safe. And those were things that helped them survive to this point. So it's not just, oh, here's how to communicate, but it's helping that understanding of, yeah, that served a very important purpose for a long time in your life, but now it might have kind of that counter effect. And how do we really dive into that and look at that and help them understand and trust that you don't need that kind of way of handling it now. It's safer. So that's not a short process, and it does take time to help them kind of trust and buy into that.
If I can just add the data on top of that too, because it reinforces everything you're saying. The average age of homeless residents might be 50, are so overrepresented in those numbers. 30% of our homeless occupants are youth. They're kids from 12 to 24 years of age. And in fact, the most common age is 0. It's infants. You can't expect someone to be literally born into homelessness and then turn 18 and instantly flip the switch to Easy Street and to seamlessly move into college, into the workforce. You've got to address that trauma. You've got to do that, everything that you guys are doing.
I'm just going to hop in there too. You're absolutely right. I mean, you have to think about, when I ask, how did we get here? You really have to understand what has happened to that child before they get to, because once you get to be 18 and 24, yes, with all the supportive services, you move forward, but the trauma that you've been through to get to that place, unless we are treating that trauma, and we also know that, we got to go back to who we're serving. Typically, we do not have, we don't have enough individuals of color in those behavioral health professions to serve our youth, to have the trust so our youth want to talk and share their trauma, and to feel, and that they also feel safe to be able to share what they've gone through, and to also to make that transition. So there's a lot to unpack here. It isn't just someone just decided, woke up one day and I decided I want to be homeless. It's based upon what has been going on in their lives, and we have to be working with, them. But we also, again, like I said, from zero, we have to be working with families so that we cannot continue to keep this flow of individuals that are going to be in our homeless system as young people.
So what are one of the our audience is asking us questions, and there's one here I've got that I think is, fits right in. It's, what are the systematic barriers that youth experience that make obtaining stability difficult? I mean, one that I know is we use low-income housing tax credits to build Marsh Brook, and there's a student rule, meaning if someone's a full-time student, they can't live in low-income housing tax credit. So there's a obvious system barrier. Are there others that just make this difficult, and what are they?
I think even, Carly, identified that there are currently 3,000 youth experiencing homeless and 4,000 that are at imminent risk. And when you look at kind of definitions surrounding youth homelessness, I think sometimes a barrier is how far into homelessness they have to be to qualify for some of the programs that will serve them. So I think, really looking at leveraging funds or, an agreement on the definition for youth homelessness so that it doesn't become a chronic way of life prior to us being able to address it. So definitely the definition for youth homelessness, I think, is one.
Are there others that, Carly, I see you nodding. You've got one.
Like vigorous nodding. Yes, yep. Everywhere. So, you touched on the student role. And for those who don't live and breathe tax credits, the theory behind that rule is a lot of students shouldn't qualify for affordable housing because in theory, they should get student loans to pay for those. But we know if you don't have the family support structure to know how to apply for those, if you don't have the credit to qualify for them, if you don't have the academic performance to maintain them, all of which are going to affect our low-income youth more heavily, that's not a solution. So this is a rule that I think was probably well-intentioned and just falls short of what we need. Also look at affordable housing as a whole is too hard to build. And that's going to impact everybody who's low and moderate income. It's going to impact the youth that we're talking about today, but it's things like zoning and regulatory barriers, which again, I think all come from a place of well-intentioned, we need a regulatory process, we need an orderly way of doing business, but instead we've had a red tape system. Instead of what we should be looking at is a green tape system. How do we find every opportunity to say yes, to make these abundant and happy and healthy places for kids to live? And, like I said, I think Columbus, and you're probably going to hear me say this 16 times today, Columbus is so far ahead of the curve on a lot of these different issues that we've got the base to do all of this and really transform the system, right? But that zoning and code and regulatory issue is one that is on the table right now. Columbus is embarking on this path. I think there's so many opportunities for us as youth experts to engage in the housing world in a way that we haven't before to shape that process.
Carly, I'm glad you stated that. I was just made a note that I am the zoning chair, and we are going to be revamping our zoning code. And because we know that we need affordable housing. And I want to say affordable housing, workforce housing, of course, we need market rate housing, but we absolutely need and the density. So I absolutely want to make sure that, Carly and anyone that is, certainly we're focused on this work, provide input, because we have this opportunity to make changes in our community around zoning. Thank you.
One of the things that Sonia mentioned in the video was that structural racism and gender both will increase a young person's risk of becoming homeless. And Councilmember Tyson, you mentioned the same thing and when you spoke earlier. And so I guess, what do we need to do to improve access to housing for people who have experienced inequities? And
well, I guess first of all, I'll just share this, that as a community, we have to declare that racism is a public health issue. And, I passed a resolution June the 1st, and over 3,200 businesses and individuals supported. So that's number one. But it's also making sure that we are intentional about having opportunities for people of color. Because if you don't do that and be able to say that, and I think that during this period in our country, there are opportunities to just say what it is. Just like when this Commission on Black Girls, I had to have Black girls, because Black girls, and I did this because I understood, one of the main reasons is that I understood who's being evicted in this community, Black women and their families. And so of course, if you're being evicted, the odds are you're probably going to go to be in the shelter system at some point, because again, because now you have an eviction or someone, and even during COVID, it's even worse. But so now when I think about, so who's in the shelter? Who's homeless? And so thinking about that is, how do you begin to change that from the upstream? What do we need to do? How do we support our girls and our families? Because our girls live with their parents and we know the stressors of parents who are living and who are making, most of them have a high school education, which means they're not making enough money to support their families. So because of lack, you have, it kind of flows through to how we get to where we are today in terms of our Black youth being within this system. So I think the key is recognizing that race matters and stating, recognizing and being able to say, we're seeing so many Black homeless youth. What do we need to do differently for that cohort? So then you add race. That's the defining factor. Then you add, their sexual orientation. You add all the other layers on top of that. And what do we need to do you need to see race and do something about, and be intentional about who we need to help at this time we need to help everyone, but that's where you're finding most of your people that are having in this crisis situation, and what do we need to do differently to support them?
Jerome, I see you nodding. I feel like this president, you got something to say. Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to agree. I think we should declare war on intergenerational poverty and homelessness, because to that point, what we are seeing is a repetition. So mom was homeless, son is now homeless, has a child, and now this infant is born into generational homelessness. And so I believe the way that we can really start to make inroads is with targeted outreach. A lot of young people really don't feel comfortable interacting and or engaging with adults, period. It's not because the adults have done something to them, but it's because of their lived experiences, right? So if I've gone from this system to that system, and people have overpromised me and underdelivered, now I'm at a point where I'm like, nope, I'm okay. I'll figure it out on my own. Back to my original point about facing adult decisions with adolescent information. So I think targeted outreach, being intentional about not only who we are actually engaging, but how we are engaging them. That to me speaks volumes about how we can really start making change.
How do you do that drum differently? So when you're talking to a youth, I mean, what do you keep in mind when you're trying to engage a young person?
Well, for me personally, it's really understanding the trauma-informed care, that people are where they are because of something that occurred, but not to look at them and say, oh, well, you're here because of decisions that you made. For instance, a lot of young people have had disagreements with their parents, right? My mom kicked me out, my grandfather kicked me out, and all we see and or hear, oh, you're disrespectful. We don't know that this young person was sexually abused. We don't know that they were treated terribly, and they've gone from foster home to foster home, and people have talked about them, not talked to them about what their needs are. And so really just sitting down and trying to get our arms wrapped around what it is that you need to be successful. What does success look like for you? The reality is a lot of these young people, for success is just being able to lay their head down at night and not have to worry about somebody jumping on them, right? Or attacking them, or being in an area that is unsafe, or living in a tent. So really understanding and unpacking what has happened to get them to this point, but then trying to figure out, okay, what can we do? Because it's really, at the end of the day, it's really about helping. It's really about service. We're trying to serve them. We're not trying to make them be what we want them to be or our definition of success. But what do you need? How do you envision your life? What makes you feel comfortable about the future?
That's helpful. You know, we've got actually another question from the audience, and I think this might be another one for you, Jerome. What does the average day at Marsh Brook look like?
Not busy at all, right?
The average day at Marsh Brook, first and foremost, is exciting, right? So there are never two situations that are alike. But I want to be clear. A lot of young people here are doing everything that we would do, right? They want to get up, they want to go to work, they have concerns about bills, they have concerns about taking care of their children. So there's no difference. I think the biggest challenge is teaching those individuals who've never, ever had anyone take time to say, I'm going to teach you how to look for a job today, or I'm going to show you how to set up an interview on Zoom because of COVID, right? So each day is different. As you might imagine, there are a lot of young people who are struggling, right? But we've got so many amazing people here. We've got counselors, we've got service providers coming in and out. We've got an educational partner trying to do whatever we can to eliminate barriers. So the other thing I need to just say is I think the thought process that putting young people in an apartment is going to solve everything is completely incorrect. There's still work to be done. There's still gains to be made. And so to answer that question specifically, what's a day like at Marsh Brook? Today is better than yesterday. And the day tomorrow's going to be better than today. Everything that we're doing is focused on moving forward and getting these young people the resources, the tools that they need to be self-sufficient. That's my goal. My goal is for them to be able to do for themselves and essentially, and I know this is going to sound crazy, to work myself out of a job, right? The day that I see all of these young people headed to the bus stop, going to work at 8 o'clock and coming back when I leave at 5 o'clock, I'll cry. But until then, we've got work to do, and that's what we're doing every day. And we're just excited about this process.
So can I ask a question to Jerome? Jerome, this just adds on to what the question that was asked of you, but I don't want to dismiss the importance of having a permanent place to be able to lay your head, as opposed to going couch surfing and going other places. Can you really speak to, even I know Sonia did, but just speak to what you see when when these young people are coming in and knowing they have a place that they can call home?
Thank you so much, Ms. Tyson. I feel like this is the greatest opportunity to see transformation overnight, to see someone come in with a bag and then walk into their apartment and help set up, this is where your dishes go. This is where your bath mat goes. That's amazing because most of them have never, ever in their lives been in a place like this. Not only is it beautiful, but a place to call home, a place where they feel safe. I've had several residents say to me, this is the first time I've actually closed my door, locked it, and went in and slept as long as I wanted to, right? That's important. It's important for security. It's important for stability. It's important for peace of mind. And I believe once we have young people who are stable, then some of those other things that we are asking them to do, right? We want you to be effective. We want you to be a responsible citizen. But how if I don't have a place to stay, or if I'm hungry, or if I have a headache because I've been up all night? This is now where I'm seeing us turn a corner. And when I see people come down the elevator at 8 a.m. and it's like, hey, I'm going to work, I'm like, well, good on you. Keep it up. I'll be here when you get back. So that is important. And I cannot overstate that because I came from outreach. So I came from engaging these young people on the land. So I know how distrusting they are. I know how difficult it is for them to just get peace of mind. To now go from that to where I have a place to lay my head and I'm cool. I can control the heat, right? I can leave my lights on all night if I want to. That's amazing. And really what it does is orient them to the possibility of living like everybody else. That's what I'm telling them. You're doing what everybody else is doing. You get up, you go to work, you come home, you lay down, you do it again. And so now they're starting to develop, okay, I see how this goes. This is making sense to me. So that's huge.
Okay.
Great question.
And if I can,
go ahead, Carly.
Sorry, I wanted to topple onto that because I know you said that this is your belief, but you know too that your belief that this works is backed by a mountain of evidence. I mean, there is data and there's statistics to support that through and through. It's called housing first. It's the fact that we start with housing. You've got to have the home base before you can triage anything else, because you can't get an education if you're out on the streets, and you can't find a job if you don't have clean clothes and a shower to come home to. And we know that if we put folks in housing first, without anything else, 77% of them are able to retain their housing. Just the bare minimum is a success. But even after that, we see ER visits fall crazy once you're in house. We see arrests and civil and jail interactions fall like crazy. We see substance abuse, mental health disorders, engagements with other systems fall like crazy, because all of this works together to put folks on the right track. So just to add on and to say thank you, because you're darn right, it worked. Did you see me catch myself there?
Yep.
Darn right.
What I hear from you, Jerome, and from others is there's a narrative sometimes about what it means to be in poverty, and there's a narrative sometimes about what it means to be a young person, and those narratives aren't necessarily reflective of actually people in poverty or youth. And so what would surprise people about the young people at Marsh Brook? Things that maybe, what's the narrative that we're holding that you don't see, that isn't really there? I mean, what would surprise people? Would they be surprised to learn about them?
That these youth are entitled, that they're unappreciative, that they're just going to tear it up. The reality is, I've got young people who are cleaning the common areas, who are making sure the dishes are clean, who are helping other people clean their rooms. There's trash left. I don't know who left it, but somebody said, you know what? I live here. It's a sense of community. So that's not your trash, that's our trash. So I'm going to keep our space clean. I've got young people walking outside in the parking lot, picking up cigarette butts. The thing is, community, I believe, has transformed a lot of their belief system, because when you go from living on your own and it's just me and I got to look out for myself and I'm not sharing with anybody, you would be amazed how many young people have actually shared meals with one another, invited people to their, hey, you want to come up for spaghetti night or play cards? It's beautiful to watch. And I'm not going to tear up on this, but I'm telling you, it is amazing because when people first came in here in August, it was kind of like, wait a minute, what is this? Let me be very cautious, got to keep my guard up. Now what we're seeing, young people who don't have vehicles are taking rides to the grocery store with those who do. Hey, I work third shift, you can come to work where I'm at. It's beautiful. And so that's the misnomer. These young people do want to succeed. They do want places of their own. They do want nice things. They do want to be economically responsible and take care of their children. They just have never had an opportunity to do that. And so I'm glad to be able to see it. And to all the funders and the people who had a part in this, thank you so much, because I'm telling you, this is the model and it's working, right? Now, I'm sure you've got data to back that up, but I'm telling you what I see every morning. I'm here every morning at 7:45. And believe me when I tell you, by the time I leave, I feel a little bit better about the progress that some young person has made. And there are 40 of them, right? And some of them need more than others, but we are committed to making sure that they get what they need to be successful, period.
Councilmember Tyson, I guess, what role do you see the city having in continuing, this assistance for young people like those at Marsh Brook?
I think our responsibility is a number of things. One, to continue to raise awareness about the young people in our community and the needs that they have. As a city, certainly to work with organizations like yours and others to be able to ask, what do you need from us to be able to help us to move our young people forward? Provide funding when we have the ability to fund. I mean, we recognize that we're not going to fund our way out of this situation, but certainly we know that additional funding is certainly needed to be able to, in partnership or other public-private partnerships, to be able to have a community like we're seeing at Marsh Brook, to make sure that young people have an opportunity to be successful, and to be an advocate for the work. And I think that's our most significant responsibility, to share what you're doing. I can't wait to go back and when we have a council meeting to share all the great things that are happening here, to have a partnership relationship with this sector in our community, to be able to listen, to have opportunities to hear from our young people as to what can we do to help them move forward in their lives, and then provide funding to help to move so that we're not continuing to stay in a place like this. So that's what I see our role being.
And Carly is a representative of affordable housing here in Central Ohio. What role do you see others, like the county and others, having in this?
I think Council Member Tyson just clicked off my whole list. Leadership, without a doubt, is one of the strongest tools that our elected officials can bring to the table, and the policymakers that they bring with them. Having somebody who can bring not just a spotlight to the issue and be talking about it when they're out in the community and raising awareness, but can bring gravitas as well, and can say that this is where, as a community, we are putting our priorities. Incredibly important. And on the funding point, that can't be underscored too much either. This isn't all about funding. You're absolutely right that there's other things that need to fall in place, but we know that the way affordable housing is structured and the way the streams work, it's a public-private partnership. That's what it's got to be. That's where the tools are. What those private investors need to see is early capital, patient capital, term commitments, because the private sector isn't able to do a 20 or a 30-year outlay without knowing that there's somebody in it for the long haul with them. So it's not just the dollar figure, it's about how those resources are deployed and brought to the table. And again, coming back to that leadership issue, saying that this is it, we're doing it. And then that commitment staying with us for the entirety of the plan, whether it is 5, 10, 20 years. I think that's the biggest thing that we can do.
Well, and we were fortunate here in Franklin County, thanks to the Community Shelter Board and the Community Care, to get a HUD grant that was specifically targeting transition age youth. And what's interesting is that HUD has created a category of 18 to 24-year-olds, so not 0 to 17-year-olds and not over 24. And so they're recognizing that this is a separate group. Amanda, would you talk about why is that so important, that we don't just say you're either an adult or you're a child, and especially trying to tackle youth homelessness?
Yeah, I think that, us as a community finally having all of the players at the table. So it's not just maybe shelters and housing providers, but now, with what Franklin County is doing in coordinated entry, really bringing service providers to the table and agencies that are working with young people who are at risk, so that there is a whole collaboration on kind of early intervention and what resources our community can put in place to kind of support them so it doesn't, continue into homelessness. So I think as a community, we're doing an amazing job with really, broadening all of what we're looking at. And, obviously with city and, county level people involved as well, that's been helpful. And I think really having those providers who understand youth development and, how interventions are different for this population and, how to provide those services effectively, I think is just, why it's important to break out that 18 to 24 because it is different.
And I had another thought too, that we've talked at the local level, we've talked at the federal level, but the state of Ohio is a really important piece of this puzzle as well. And without getting too hyper technical, there's a pool of resources that are available to help address chronic homelessness right now. And they've existed for many years, and they've been wildly successful in pulling that number down, like just grabbing that curve with two hands and yanking it down. And as a state, we're really close to being able to declare a functional end to chronic homelessness. And when we do, knock wood, we need to decide how we are going to continue using those resources. And are they evaporating, or are we going to be able to redirect them towards the next horizon, the next frontier, which I fully think should be youth homelessness.
Yeah.
At the local level, the federal level, we can take what we know and what we're seeing and communicate that to the state and say, please don't let this opportunity go to waste. Please make sure that we are continuing to direct this money where it needs to be.
Yeah. And really looking at outreach, money that funds outreach, early intervention, providing the support needed to families who are, having stress over, finances or, which is causing discord in relationship. The more that we can get in and provide support to families early and kind of look at how we can support them longer term so that this isn't the 4,000 that are now at imminent risk of homelessness, and how can we as a community support that work or leverage funds to support some of that prevention and outreach would be.
Well, and it's interesting you mentioned community, because one of the questions we have from the live chat is, how can the broader community support your work in transition age youth?
I will jump in if no one else can. If you've got an hour on a Thursday night, go to an area commission meeting, go to a zoning meeting, get engaged, and just say, affordable housing is important to me. Because that room is way too small and the voices of opposition are way too loud compared to where the rest of our population is right now. So whether you're a houser or you're I don't know, whatever field you're coming from, this is not such a hard issue that we can't all get involved. Don't be intimidated by the fact that housing is complex. Sure, it's complex, but we all live in homes. We all have a household budget. It really isn't all that different. So my advice is always just stand up, get engaged, talk to your elected officials, talk to your area commissioners, and let them know where your priorities are.
I'll add to that too. I think that it's really important to, like we're spending this hour together. You've shown the video, and as a resident of our community, is to have an understanding of what's going on with homeless youth. To have that understanding, because because you can, and I do agree with Carly, people should go to the Area Commission meetings and be a voice for more affordable housing in their communities. But what you also find is that some people are afraid when you hear the word affordable housing or housing for youth who've been homeless. They put all these stigmas on individuals, and that creates a challenge. So what we have to do is be able to have an understanding of these young people are people just like you and I. It's just that we've had, maybe we had the difference maybe of who our parents happen to be, or some other adult that cared about us to show us the way, so that we're not maybe in the situation as our young people. But we all have to be understanding that we are a community that has a responsibility of being our brothers and our sisters keeper and helping all to move forward. So having that knowledge and understanding, and not be afraid of housing coming into your community. And so, and in my role as a zoning chair, I hear these kinds of things. And so it's up to me when I hear that people have voted down zoning in communities to be able to try my best to educate people and say, this is really needed. So the work that we're talking about here is needed to help improve lives in our community. And there are times where I will have to vote against what the commission wanted for the betterment of the whole community as we negotiate our way through it. But don't be afraid, and be willing to say, I'm helping our community. I'm helping individuals move forward in their lives. Thank you.
Councilwoman Tyson, you don't know it yet, but I'm taking that whole answer and it's my ringtone from here on out. Because it's fear, and it's not any old fear. It's a rational fear. It is myth over fact. And we need to start breaking that down. And there was a killer article in the New York Times just this morning about a community that fought tooth and nail to oppose the kind of project we're talking about now. And they were not successful, and it was built. And here we are so many years later, and they love it. It's their neighbor. It's part of their community. If we just get over the fear factor, smooth sailing.
Well, thank you. I hate to end because this has been just awesome, and but it is close to noon, so we've reached the end of our time together. Please, everyone, take up the advice to continue the conversation and continue showing up, because this is something we can solve. And I think Carly's right. We have a moral imperative to make that number of kids that are homeless zero. So for the panelists, I just, Councilwoman Tyson, Carly, Amanda, and Jerome, thank you so much for your insights and your time. We so appreciate it. And thanks to everybody who's watching us on the live stream for joining us and for giving us your questions and comments, and for celebrating Marsh Brook with us. We're so grateful for your support, and we're grateful that we were able to build it and pull it off, and that it's going well. And we look forward, actually, I personally look forward to seeing everyone again in person. But until we can do that, please everyone stay safe and take care, and have a great afternoon. And thanks again, and goodbye.
Thanks for hosting.
Yeah, thank you all.
Congrats.
Thank you.